one time when I was really overwhelmed with workload, and that was a time when I was leading one evaluation of a project, a multi-country project covering regions of South Africa, Eswatini, and Lesotho. I had to coordinate between multiple stakeholders, ensure that I've met different needs of different clients, and really make haste in my plans to ensure that I'm working within the timelines stipulated for undertaking the full activity. Part of the plans that I put in place to be able to keep on time was to ensure that I delegated as much as I could within my team. I also ensured that I had a system that would help me to keep on time and be able to I thoroughly lock in the required level of effort within time. And I also took time to intentionally review and reflect to ensure that everything was well checked and nothing fell through the cracks. So just in conclusion, 3 important tactics that I put in place to ensure that I really kept time was, firstly, delegating so as to minimize the workload and only focusing on what I only needed to do myself. And secondly, working within teams and ensuring that there's a system that helped me to keep up to date. And then, of course, thirdly, having intentional reviews, which are important as well for an emotional debrief, so as to be able to circle the emotional residue. Thank you. Over to you, Table Topics Master.
Evaluations is the breakfast of champions. And evaluate the speech and not the speaker. The 2 most coveted words in evaluation speeches that I've been hearing throughout Mariswe Toastmasters. So I thought I should say it so I can get that stamp of approval. Jokes aside, I've been fortunate to have evaluated Belinda throughout her tenure here at Mariswe, which isn't far further from when I started. So it's always been a pleasure evaluating the progress over time. So I must say, you've yet again shown some courage in the speech. To reiterate, the objective of the speech was to look at communicating non-verbally, looking at the things that you do intentionally and intentionally while you present your speech. So, ladies and gentlemen, notice how her key message of happiness was aligned with the content throughout the speech. I think that was really a good onset. She started off by talking about what influences of happiness were, which could be attributed to genetics, to your mindset. Then she looked at how one can influence their happiness by doing things such as yoga, therapy, and meditation. And then she wrapped it all up with a nice statement saying that really happiness leads to success and it's not the other way around, which tied quite well to the theme that our Toastmaster had talked about with regards to the hustle culture. Ladies and gentlemen, with regards to the objectives of the speech, there were a few things that one can work on with regards to it. Definitely, I must say, Belinda, you definitely were nervous in the beginning of the speech, and as a result, it threw you off. But fortunately, you picked yourself up and then you managed to recover towards the end. But one thing I can notice is when you are a bit flustered, you definitely look up instead of looking towards the screen. That could be attributed also to more in preparation. If that could definitely be worked on, you would then exude a bit more confidence and then look towards the camera as opposed to the notes, which is something one can also try to avoid in their speeches, especially in virtual seating, because one can actually notice when you're looking at your notes. So that's one thing I would say that one could look at. I would also say that standing up is really a great thing one can do, because when you stand up, it gives you that instant confidence. So that can also allow you to continue your speech without feeling a bit flustered. So I would recommend that in the next attempt, it would be great to do that. One of the examples I was looking forward to, but unfortunately I have not seen, was the theme of happiness, where you could have used contrasting things, where you talk sadness, maybe lower tone, and then happiness, smile, and show some energy, to emphasize those contrasting views, which will tie closely with the objectives of the speech. So I was hoping to see that. But one thing I would give you credit to was when you emphasized with the Afghanistan ladies that you did show some emphasis when you're trying to show that they are covered. So I must give you credit towards that. What I would definitely recommend, Belinda, given that we've been on this journey together for some time, is really just giving this a second shot. I think you've definitely had so much potential to provide us if you were to do this again. But overall, I'm looking forward to your continuous growth.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Where is she from? That is the curious case of cultural identity. Let me start by setting the scene for you. When you talk about cultural identity, we need to just define at high level because we all have different understandings of what culture is and what identity is. And when both these elements are put together, cultural identity. A lot of research looks at culture as a belief system, a set of norms or values that either an individual or group of people determine acceptable. And when we look at the concept of identity, it's now the essence of being. How do you, as an individual, view the world around you? How do you relate to the world around you? Bringing these two elements together, cultural identity is then seen as how you as an individual relate to the elements of religion, your nationality, the ethos of what you believe in terms of your upbringing, how we engage with each other in public settings as well as intimate settings. With that said, let me tell you a little myth that goes around. When you look at cultural identity, it's somehow seen as this fixated thing. My good people, it is not a fixated thing because as we evolve as human beings, as we experience wonderful things, as we experience bad things, the way in which we relate to one another changes. Our identity equally changes. Take just 5 seconds to think about your identity within the context of leadership. Did you want to be a leader 5 years ago? Today, do you still want to be a leader? And if it is a yes or a no, what influenced that? Is it a conversation you had? Is it an event that you attended? Basically, that evolution of culture and the evolution of your identity. Now that we've set the scene, let's get into the fun part. The curious case of Gamu's cultural identity. Before I unpack this, I would like to ask 2 volunteers a question. Tuka, what is that one stereotype you've heard about African women?
I think the one that we've all heard the comment that African women are meant to be in the kitchen, we're meant to be mothers, and raise our kids. We can't do much work, we can't compete with men, we have to dress a certain way. There's quite a few.
Awesome. Mbachi, you've been saved. Tuka gave you a whole selection of traditional stereotypes that we continue to face today. I'm going to ask all the listeners to keep what Tuka has said at the back of the mind. Now, bringing this element into the curious case of Gamu's cultural identity, when I meet people for the first time, I hear the murmurs, where is she from? And when I start speaking, the questions come out, who is she? And as people get to know me, I see that internal deliberation from the facial expression. Where on earth is she from? This is the fun part. I ask people to take a guess. The guesses that come out, I'm Ghanaian, I'm Kenyan, I'm from Uganda, Malawi, basically West, Central, as well as East Africa. Very few people will actually believe and welcome the fact that I'm Zimbabwean. And let me expand on this, ladies and gentlemen. I am a Shona woman. I am from the eastern region of Zimbabwe, particularly Mutezo. I am a Samanika, a representative of the Manika tribe, also known as Wasu. That is Gamu for you. That is the ethos of my cultural identity. This becomes interesting. Ah, you're from Zim. your accent doesn't sound like you're from Serbia. I'm like, what are you expecting? We were expecting better accent when you started to speak. I'm like, all right, is that what defines a person? More so as an African woman. So I'm removed from a bucket of my Afrocentrism and put in that of a British environment. Gamu was supposed to have studied in the UK. She has never been to the village. Shocking point, I love the village. I'm a village nerd. These are a few examples that have shaped who I am, that have shaped my cultural identity. And in doing so, one is open to listening to people's opinions and perceptions, because that's how you get to a stage of appreciating that there's beauty in diversity. Now, if we engage one another, we don't perpetuate stereotypes of what an African female ought to be. The more we engage, the more we deliberate, I'm put in a position to think, can I actually start a new stereotype here? A stereotype that shows an African woman has no prescribed accent. An African woman can be disruptive and innovative in rural areas, in urban areas. An African woman can equally be active in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths. An African woman does know how to lead in the kitchen and beyond. We lead in different ways. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let me leave you with this one element. Are you ready to challenge how you perceive people around you, to challenge the norms, the stereotypes that we come across on a daily basis? Are you ready to have an appetite to learn and put yourself in other people's environments? If you're not ready, after this, take some time and think thoroughly, because our cultural identity is not fixed. It evolves and plays a critical role in our social and professional evolution. Thank you. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.